and a warm welcome to the Captain's Picnic Table, my new podcast, where great leadership meets great food, one story and one sandwich at a time. In this podcast, we invite a guest who has led from the front, whether on the field or in the boardroom, to take a seat at our picnic table and to explore the lessons of leadership, high performance, and the culinary alfresco moments that have shaped them. The show is kindly supported by Fortnum & Mason and TTB Sport, two businesses that understand the power of exceptional experiences, whether it's at centre court or the chef's table. For over 300 years, Fortnum & Mason have been crafting extraordinary food and drink, the essential ingredients to create picnics that turn any sporting occasion into something truly special. TTB Sport unleashes the power of sport to create lasting impact, whether that be connecting people through unforgettable experiences or simply using sport as a catalyst for positive change in business. Together, these two businesses champion the joy of sport, food, and of course, great company. With the British and Irish Lions tour to Australia almost upon us, it felt only right that I invited a former Lion to join me for a bite to eat and a natter at my picnic table. And boy oh boy is this guest a rugby legend and a top bloke. With 58 caps for Ireland, 36 of them as captain, he was possibly one of the most recognisable players ever to grace the field. He was the IRB, for old money, World Rugby World Player of the Year in 2001 and won 5 caps for the British and Irish Lions in 97 and 2001. Keith Wood's rugby CV is remarkable. He was first capped in 95 and he started his amateur career at Garryowen and then moved to the professional era with Harlequins and Munster. He was a prestigious try scorer, particularly for a hooker, with 15 international tries, which was a record, I think, for any player in the Type 5 for years, and which is why he became known as the Raging Potato, or Uncle Fester. He was also a handy hurling player, playing for Clare in 1988, before focusing his athletic prowess on rugby. He retired from rugby in 2003 and went on into business and became a regular figure on television and radio. Boy, I'm glad I got that out of the way. Woody, welcome to my picnic table.
Well, I was struggling a little bit. We have had a lovely relationship for a long time, Giles, but you've never been nice to me. So I'm quickly taken off. I was going to, you mentioned being very recognisable. There was a survey done by the BBC in 2000, and I was the second most recognisable rugby person after Rory Underwood's mother.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. And let's kick things off straight away. I think this is a natter for you. But if we were at the West Car Park at Twickenham before an England-Ireland big showdown, what drink and cheeky snap would I get you from our Fortnum & Mason hamper just to whet your appetite before we got stuck in?
Well, it's not anathema for me. I think I can't think of anything better than a bit of crack there. I'm suffering a little bit for the fact that there is no more vodka Pimm's, because I did like Pimm's as a crazy Irishman. It was still a kind of a good thing just to be contrary and confused.
Was that the one in the slightly dark purple bottle? It had a slightly different colour to the gin.
Different bottle.
Yeah.
I am a celiac, so it's quite difficult to. I'm very high maintenance. I've become incredibly high maintenance. But I like a gluten-free bacon and avocado sandwich. I would be very happy with that. I would have a bit of dry cider if I had to. I'd take that too. I like a bit of quiche, spinach and feta maybe. But if truth be known, I'd rather a good glass of claret over all of the above.
All of the above. Have you always been a celiac?
About the last 15 years. And it's led to... it's very awkward, very uncomfortable, and depending on where you go, you just have to be unbelievably mindful about what you're having. I can get quite sick, and there's no fun in this whatsoever.
No, you poor thing. Well, we'll make sure that the Fortnum chefs look after you appropriately. Woody, your rugby career has spoken for itself because I've just run through all of the highlights for everybody. But tell us a little bit about your world post-retirement. Was that hard for you? You know, you've been so high profile. Yes, you've been educated and all the rest of it. But did you find that transition into the real world or the civvy world hard or not?
I didn't actually, and it was difficult, but I didn't find it difficult at the start. I am slightly OCD. I would have had a huge amount prepared for me post rugby, and I remember when I did the press conference at the end of my career, at the end of the World Cup in 2003. The journalist said, "Well, are you going to go into coaching?" And I said, "No, I'll be in the office on Monday." And I meant that, and it's what I did. And I was fortunate in many respects. It's interesting how people react to different things, but I had the great benefit of playing half of my career in the amateur period and half of it in professional. So I was used to getting up to work. I was used to, and I worked all the way through my rugby career, and it was the only kind of thing that kept me sane. Rugby is a very difficult, incredibly hard career to have, where you have a very public appraisal every single Saturday afternoon. Whatever number of million on the telly see you, whatever number of thousands in the ground see your rise and fall of your performance. And that's a tough appraisal, a tough thing to do. And so when I went to retire, I kind of got my head around it a couple of years beforehand, that I knew I was plotting to retire for myself without telling anybody else. And so that when the day actually arose, it was 2 weeks too early. I wanted to get to a World Cup final and didn't. But I was ready, and I was ready to stop. I hadn't told anyone. I didn't tell my wife. She found out when I made the announcement. I was just... It was my decision, and I wanted to be able to make it myself, go out under your own steam. I'd had a lot of injuries before then, so I had prepared for the eventuality of stopping. And it's what I would say to every sportsman now is, you know, your retirement is early by comparison to everybody else. What are you going to do for the rest of your life?
Do you think, I mean, you mentioned it, do you think you were blessed, wrong word, but you know what I mean, lucky that you did play in the dual, in the amateur and the professional era? Do you think that gave you an ethic in the civvy street that you might not have had if you were a young pro who'd gone to an academy age 15?
Yeah, I think blessed is an interesting word. I think I'm blessed by a variety of different things. Blessed by getting injured, which doesn't ever sound like a blessing. You build up pure grit. I know the psychology word would be resilience, but I like some of the old-fashioned words that suit the more kind of natural, flow off the tongue words. It was. I remember looking around the change room. I've described this before, and this isn't a rugby conversation, which is important. This is a sort of human conversation. When I started at 18 playing senior rugby, I'd look around the change room, and you'd have a banker, a builder, a couple of students, guy who owned a bar, solicitor. There was a mixture of everything, and independent thought was absolutely at a premium. It was wherever you looked for, you got a different type of opinion, different perspective, different life perspective. And then we go to near the end of my career, playing professional rugby, and you look around and everybody's a professional rugby player, almost organised what to wear, what to think, how to formulate an idea. And I didn't like that part of it. At the end, I am a contrarian. I was very hard on coaches because I had an expectation that their job was to make me better, and I wanted to be better every day. And so I was a pain in the arse, like guaranteed for every coach, and was hard on a good few of them, of which there might be a couple I'd feel guilty about, but only a couple. But it was like, I loved the idea of it. I loved the idea of suddenly going from working in a bank to running in the sponsorship of the Irish rugby team for the bank as a sort of 21, 22-year-old to suddenly getting paid for your hobby. And the best decision I made at that time was to set up a company, because it then meant that I had a focus away from the pressures of the game. I love the game, and it's part and parcel of our family, our house. I've absolutely loved every bit of it. But my mother had a line that she'd said a long time before, and it's something that still sticks with me, which was that rugby is only part of your life, and that's a really big deal.
Yeah, wise words. How old were you when you first became captain?
24.
And did you captain every side going up through the ranks before Ireland?
Yeah, I kind of captained a good few sides. I played rugby in school in St. Munchin's, and then quit for 2 or 3 years in the middle of it. I was very small, a very poor scrum half. I used to say that I was a scrum half, and my out half was like a full back with the manner in which I passed. So I played every sport, and then at 17, 18, decided to concentrate on rugby with Gary Owen. I captained some of the teams there, captained Munster under 20. I captained the Irish Possibles, there were final trials in those days. And then became captain of Ireland kind of from nowhere. I'd had a couple of interesting fights with the IRFU, and I call them fights now, and maybe it was a sign of nascent leadership. I'm not sure, but there were certain things that I felt were important to fight for, and so I fought for them. And it suddenly became a situation where I had gone to England against their wishes. They wanted me to stay.
That was with Harlequins, right?
Yeah. But I got the best insight into leadership of all time from the CEO of the bank I worked for, which was Irish Permanent, a guy called Roy Douglas. And I asked to meet him and had a discussion with him. I got injured in the World Cup in 95. I'd been out injured for quite a while. I was going to be out for about 15 or 16 months. It was the Irish surgeons that I went to said I should retire immediately. I was 23. It was pretty daunting. And I went and found a guy called Ian Bailey in London. He operated on me and gave me 8 more years in a career. But I went to Roy Douglas, the CEO, and just said, listen, I've got these offers on the table. I have a really good job with you. I just want you to be part of the conversation, because he'd given me a very good job heading up the sponsorship, which was really cool. And he said, well, I can make it very easy for you. He said, you have a doubt with your shoulder. I said, yeah. He said, I'll remove all doubt. He said, if your shoulder goes, you always have a job back here. And
wow.
It was an extraordinary thing. I got an open-ended leave of absence. And it was an extraordinary gift to give a young guy. And so I kind of went headlong into professional rugby then, joining Harlequins, which was really interesting. I signed a 3-year contract. And I can tell you the full extent of my ambition, which was to buy a house. So if I was there for 3 years, I'd have enough money to buy a house. I knew I'd hate London, of course. From Killaloe, County Clare, it's a small little town. And I fell in love with the place after about 3 weeks. So I lived in London for 15, 16 years. I miss it all the time. It's a truly amazing place. But I joined Quins and suddenly became more vocal. And suddenly, after about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I became captain of Ireland when I was in Quins. After 8 weeks of the season, I became captain of Ireland. And I did so much wrong. I mean, my God, it was just fantastic. I didn't know. And you make mistakes and then you're trying to learn from them really quickly,
So I wanted to ask that. So you're a young man, you're in London, so you're a boy from Ireland, and you've come to London. 8 weeks later, you're captain of your country. So this is all change. You're making leadership decisions that maybe you reflect on and later on in life that you were different. How do you think that kind of linear definition of how you were a leader changed from when you first captained Ireland all the way through? What did you learn? What was the process of learning?
Well, the process of learning was in white hot competition. So whatever about my appraisal as a player, I was being appraised as a leader as well. And one of the really great don't know how I did it or why I didn't know. I was an assiduous reader. I read everything. I tried to read on every single thing possible. Read an awful lot of Bob Rotella books on kind of critical thinking under pressure that we see in the golf world now. He's a golf coach. Read Mike Brearley's The Art of Captaincy back in the day. I read everything, but that doesn't mean you have to live it too. And I overspoke, which I still have a chance of doing that from time to time. But I overspoke. I tried to do everything myself. We were a very callow team. I wanted to try and take the pressure off them as much as I could, even though I was a callow captain. I tried to take as much pressure off them as I could. And in so doing so, probably put more pressure on them almost, and as my captaincy went on over the rest of my career, I learned new things, changed different things. None of it was linear. I mean, you said it was linear. It wasn't linear. There are big ups and downs. Trying to understand yourself, trying to understand the people around you. So by the time I got to the end of my career and after, I would view the knowing and understanding of the people in your charge as being the most important part that you need to do. I mean, every single one of them is a human. Every single one of them has peaks and troughs in their emotions. Every single one of them has weaknesses. Actually, for the vast majority of them in sport, they try and cover them up with bravado. But for the most part, there are vulnerabilities there. And the understanding of vulnerability is the greatest strength you can have as a person and as a captain, for me.
Yeah, and I was going to say, do you think that's what your lessons of leadership is actually, that people, whether they put their mask of bravado or people put on disguises to hide their own worries and insecurities, is that the art of leadership, is to understand understand the people in your charge to bring the best out? Is that the distillation?
I think the understanding of people and the understanding of the context for where they are at that moment in time. It's not static. It's not stationary. It is, you have to understand the different areas of where relationships sit within each individual. The relationship with the world, the relationship with their friends and family, with their work colleagues, with themselves almost. And that's where, for me, that's the kernel of captaincy, sits in the knowledge of that. And also, captain doesn't know everything. Captain knows the people. And I always say, who knows the skills? Who's the better guy to know the skills? It could be a coach, or in work, it could be anything. It could be somebody in HR, it could be one of the engineers, it could be anything at all. And so there isn't one that fits all. But actually, these are all people who want to do well. There still is nobody that you've ever worked with who really wants to do a bad job. That's just not kind of part and parcel of it.
When you look back, I mean, we're both well into our 50s now. We're old boys who've known each other for a long, long time. But when you look back, is there an individual, whether it was in your sporting career, your school career, it could be a teacher, coach, someone from your family, who, if you were to really bring it or pare it all back, was the most influential person, perhaps in the way that you set out in both your sporting and later on your business career, that someone inspired you?
Yeah, I don't have it down as one. And I find it really hard to put it down as a list and of people. I think I did a little process about a year and a half ago of writing the people who influenced me at different moments in time. I don't think there's ever one person who is that eureka moment that everything suddenly seems to make sense afterwards. I'd have a big drive now that after I have a conversation with somebody, I would say where it's a difference of opinion, I'd like my opinion to be slightly better than it was before. I'm not fighting the corner to be right. I'd like to be a little bit more right if I can at the end of it. There were people that were extraordinary in terms of philosophy for how they went about their life. There was a guy, my first ever coach in Garryowen was a guy called Paddy Reid. His story is legend, right? And that can't be said about everybody. So he played and won the Grand Slam with Ireland in 1948. He played in the centre. He then went and played rugby with Huddersfield afterwards, which is about 3 miles from where my grandfather was from. So I'm part Yorkshireman. He went to Huddersfield, he got injured and came back home after 6 weeks. But because he played rugby league, he got a 40-year ban. His ban was up in 1989. He was my first coach in Garryowen in the under-20s in 1989. To say he was a bitter man wasn't doing bitterness justice, but he had a freedom of spirit to the way the game should be played. And he'd give you a bollocking if you didn't run to space. And if you didn't make a pass, he said the ball will move faster. And an awful lot of his philosophies about it. But one of my favourite ones was I was 17. And we were up in Galway, up in Clarenbridge, which is a very famous oyster and Guinness and Oyster Festival. And we're coming back from playing Galwegians or Corinthians. And I pretended I'd lost some money because I'd no money. So I pretended I'd lost it. And he gave me 20 quid. And I said, look, I'll get it back to you as soon as I can. And he said, no, you don't need to give it back to me. He said, but you just pass it on. And he said, and actually always buy somebody else a pint as well. You can't ever drink on your own. I said, okay, that's pretty cool. And I do like that idea. And actually for alcohol, which I do like alcohol, alcohol is about sociability. And it's about that breaking of bread or whatever it is, not for a celiac, but you know what I mean? So it is that idea of something a little bit kind of fantastic and social.
And something that you could take on and impart to your children and to friends as well. I mean, it's a wonderful way to live life.
And I love that, and love that still to this day. And I have a friend of mine for 16 years. I've known him for, what age am I now? I've known him for about 35 years. And he's 12 years older than I am. And we have a wine club. And it's 9 of his friends and 9 of my friends. And so the spread goes from sort of mid-40s to late 70s, and it's fantastic. And it's a group of guys, and we've a couples version of it as well. And it's just it's all about sociability. It's all about, there's never any reason for it. The reason is we've decided to do it, and it becomes a farce, as most things do. But it's magnificent. But we've done that for 15 or 16 years now.
Well, you come from a country that is incredibly hospitable and social, but I would imagine the first time you played rugby in France and you're then discovering a love of French wine, but the hospitality that goes with French rugby after the game in terms of sharing wine is something that as a young player way back when I discovered that to this day, there are a few, I was never at any level, but it didn't matter. You were welcomed through wine to the game. It was very special. Very special.
One of the problems for me was I was at a level which meant we were going over to play. We weren't going over to partake of the wine. But my favorite memory of playing in France, we played Colomiers for Harlequins, and we won the game, which was great. There was a big marquee set up afterwards. There was a great banquet afterwards. There were 2 brass bands at each end of the marquee, and they had got a local artist, and the local artist was to paint his impressionist view, or maybe an abstract view of his idea of what a harlequin was for the duration of the dinner. So he was painting while the dinner was going on, while these 2 brass bands were having a battle of the bands meeting in the middle while we were all eating, drinking wine. It was magnificent. And I look, South of France is, as a rugby fan, player, supporter, doesn't matter what, is one of the great things of all time. I did last year, I'm going to say partook in the Marathon de Medoc. I didn't run it because I decided my running days are behind me. My wife ran it. I walked half of it in and out of a lot of the chateau in Pauillac, which was pretty phenomenal. So post playing, I really appreciate the.
You caught up.
Yes, I really do in France.
Am I right in the Marathon de Medoc? There's a sort of station every kilometre or every 2 kilometres where you can have a glass. Is that right?
Yeah, but you go in and out of all the chateau. So you run in around through the vines. You go into the different houses to the and famous marks of wine. running in. And of course, there's a big Irish connection from the wine geese back from the 18th century. So you're going into Lynch Badge. So there's an awful lot of the French winemakers have an Irish connotation to it too.
Do you consider yourself lucky as a person? Do you look back on life? Do you feel that you were lucky?
I do, actually, yeah. I mean, I like it. I wake up in the morning. I have a very varied work life. And if it wasn't varied, I wouldn't be able to do it and I wouldn't enjoy it. It leads to high levels of madness, but I work on things I'm particularly interested in. And so I find that to be fantastic. I met my wife in London, Nicola. We've 3 boys that are all grown up now, which is quite entertaining. My youngest is 19, and I don't know where the hell those years went. And there's a lot of fun in this house. It's pretty good. I do. I'm very lucky. I think luck plays a huge part in not just a sporting life, but a business life, in a leadership life. A lot of people are affected by mistakes that they make, and everybody makes loads. So when I was doing my leaving cert, which is the equivalent of the A levels, right, back when you're 17 or 18, an A for an A level for a leaving cert was 85 out of 100. So I would always say, well, you get 15 things wrong and you're still getting an A, so, and that does work, actually. There are a lot of things that don't go right for you. And that doesn't mean it's easy to sort them out afterwards. But I think a lot of people worry about the things they do wrong as opposed to learning the lessons from that and enjoying the things they do right. I mean, life is supposed to be celebrated. It has to be.
And it seems to me as well, the adage, whether it was Gary Player who said, the more I practice, the luckier I get. But I think in a business sense, there's that sense of if you network, if you meet people, if you put yourself in environments, you're more likely to meet people that will take you to the next step. And it feels to me, particularly in the digital world where people hide behind screens and etc., there is no substitution, particularly in business, for knowing and building that network, of which sport and a game like rugby has always been, that goes part and parcel.
It does, but it's trying to say this without being patronizing, and probably fail, but it's...
Well, just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I was very shy. I went to work in a bar. I failed my first year in college and I went and worked in a bar in Limerick, and I ended up with the facade of Keith the barman, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And so I'm still shy in my way. I kind of understand shyness for how it pertains to me. That's the way I would describe it. I'm an incredibly well-practiced introvert. I mean, I work unbelievably hard getting over at it, a sense of discomfort that I would have in conversation or working on for the BBC. I worked for the BBC for 21 years. I never really looked at myself back afterwards. I'd it done. But I worked hard at not doing that. I'm not a guy on social media. I don't really care about social media. But I worked at trying to talk to people. And now, as it turns out, I'm interested in what people do and what they say and how they think and what their philosophy is and what their curiosities are. And I used to run a leadership lecture at one stage, and it was called The Case for the Curious Executive. And it was what made people really interested in getting into work all the time, what made them really interested in empowering people to deliver for the companies that they worked for. What made them still want to do that at 80 years of age is an extraordinary thing. And that sense of curiosity for me was is a huge thing, and I don't know whether that answers or that is.
No, it does. And I think curiosity and being interested in people, interesting and interested, have to be the way forward. So I have to talk about the Lions Tour. It's taking place. I think this short show comes out on the day before the first time, I think that's right, the British and Irish Lions have ever played in Ireland, in Dublin. So a very exciting occasion. Are you excited by this Lions Tour? As a former Lion, as someone that's been part of your life, does it excite you every 4 years when it rolls around?
I love it. I sometimes I get a bit weary of it. I think you'd rather I was honest on here, but I think at times it gets overplayed, gets overhyped. It doesn't need the hype. The difficulty of it, the rareness of it, the challenge, which is pretty stark, the honesty required, and people that mightn't get that, but a Lions Tour that succeeds tends to put everything that makes you good about you as a player and you as a team out on the table for everybody else to see. So all your strengths and weaknesses, you're that honest. That's one of the hardest things you can do. And doing that on a Lions Tour, and it doesn't guarantee success, but my God, does it go a long way to you loving those guys that you're there with, and look, you've been in my company often enough in the past when I've met guys from 97. I just lose it when I see them. I mean, these were guys that, we put our bodies on the block together, but it was that honesty that goes into it. So do you think I'm not looking forward to that? Or the fact my dad played for the Lions in 1959. This is like, I grew up in a Lions house. I love it. I love it for the players. I've been in contact with a few of them. I love it for what they're going to experience. It is a pinnacle, one of the pinnacles that you can have in your career. And all you want is for them to be able to embrace it with that level of honesty so that they can see every bit of it. And that's pretty magic.
The game is going through certain existential challenges at club level. It's not all rosy in the garden of rugby union, the game that we both love. Do you think there is a responsibility, or maybe just one of the purposes of the Lions is to remind the community of rugby of what the real heartbeat and the culture of rugby is all about? Do you think it's a last bastion of the game, or is that too much responsibility? Or is there just something that you talked about overexposure? And I totally understand what you're talking about, is its rarity and scarcity has a great value. But do you think right now rugby needs the Lions to help get it back onto the track we both want it to be?
Well, I can bring it down to brass tacks very quickly. But I actually do think it could be the last bastion for some of the original Corinthian values of the sport. And that I don't think that's overplaying it. I also think from a financial perspective, it's the only thing that keeps the world of rugby ticking over properly. I know that Australia effectively mortgaged their future until the next Lions Tour. That's what keeps them afloat. There is a whole variety of side deals that have been done from the amateur times that still exist, and they exist entirely because of the benefit that the Lions can bring to one of the Southern Hemisphere giants, and that's incredibly important. It is one of the most important. Like, I don't want to talk about it as a brand. It is one of the most important features of the sport. It needs to be treated with increased respect, not decreased. It should never be marginalized into a smaller window. I'm a big proponent of player welfare. The players are playing for far too long in the season. There's too much rugby going on. The standard and the level of hits and everything are so much bigger now, and they genuinely are bigger. I'm in awe of an awful lot of the fitness levels of some of the players now. I'm happy enough for the Lions always to be in a 4-year window, but I wish the following year they would have no summer tour for the players that go on it. They shouldn't be allowed to go on it. They need a summer off in a 4-year cycle. We want these players to play on and on and on because they're that good. I can tell you, I went on 2 tours. The year after each tour was just extraordinarily difficult. What what the Lions take out of you is needs some time to put back in. And what it takes out of you is this huge mental and physical toil that you have to go through to be able to understand how everybody else plays in about 4 weeks. It is incredibly intense, and it's worth every single bit of it. And so when you say, yeah, I don't like the over sensationalized music that kind of goes with an awful lot of it, the hyping over of these things, but in the practicality of it, yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, we're all looking forward to it. And moving into sort of rugby and food and drink, which I think are probably more of our most favourite subjects, particularly the food and drink. So rugby is synonymous with a good time, particularly after the game, and lots of both. And whether you're in a car park or a tailgating party, whatever it may be. So courtesy of my good friends at Thornton Mason, we are going to be creating over this series the ultimate sporting hamper. So I have many guests coming on. We've had Andrew Strauss, now you, there'll be more to come. And I want to sort of create the ultimate sporting hamper just really for my own benefit as much as anything. So I need help to build this. So you touched on it earlier, and it's obviously all of this is above with is gluten-free. So we'll just take that as read because of your celiac thing. But your sandwich filling of choice is what? Anything in the world. You've talked about avocado and bacon, I think. Is that your go-to?
Bacon and avocado is just...
Bacon and avocado?
Well, bacon and nearly anything, actually. There's a touch of Homer Simpson about me on that one. Everything is enhanced by bacon.
I couldn't agree more. And so where are you on crisps in a sandwich or not?
No,
is that forbidden?
No.
Never?
I look, of course, I've been known to have a crisp sandwich, but no, that's just not appropriate for anything, really.
Okay. And then we're going through, I think you mentioned it earlier, sausage roll, Scotch egg, game pie, quiche. You only have one.
I'd go game pie. I mean, a gluten-free, short crust game pie with every type of game you can put in it. Absolutely. But for that, then you have to have a nice port.
We can put in a port. Is that what type of port? You go for a Taylor's, something one of those?
Taylor, absolutely. You can go for it. I'm trying to think of a very unusual one, Van Zeller's, that I have become quite partial to.
You've tried.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm a great fan, particularly over a winter game of rugby, soup from a thermos. Do you have a soup that you'd as a go-to?
Well, I like a meat broth. So, so a really good French onion, actually.
Yeah, strong. We can put that in. And again, cake, a bit of a nightmare for you because of the gluten thing, but hey, it's my script, so we'll just keep with it. Victoria sponge, lemon drizzle, fruit cake, chocolate cake. Where are you?
I like a coffee sponge, and you can make a decent gluten-free one. You need to eat it all, and you need to eat it really quickly. But I do like one of those. Yeah, coffee works too, you know.
And so, sort of your secret cheeky ingredient, is there one treat that you'd sneak into the bottom of the basket that is just the Keith Wood guilty, I bloody love this? You know, it could be pork scratchings or something like that. You probably shouldn't, but you can't help yourself.
I spent a bit of time in Italy last year, and I will admit that I kind of lose it a little if you have a cracking Parmesan and a really good balsamic vinegar. Yeah. So something that's aged, sticky and viscous. That's exactly what you're looking for.
That's what you need. I'll tell you, my mouth is really watering. This is a nightmare. So we've got this picnic. This is our hamper. And you can invite 3 guests, your guests, alive or dead, just people to share the Keith Wood picnic. People maybe who've influenced you, heroes of yours. Who might that be? I
remember doing one of these years ago, and you haven't prompted me with this one, so this is going to put me under proper pressure.
Yeah,
I said Spock for his logic, but that was I'm a big Star Trek fan. That's just that's something. I had the opportunity twice to meet Muhammad Ali and didn't.
Did you?
And wow. Didn't meet him, which is the most irritating thing of all time. But I actually got the guys, my boys, to sit down and watch when we were Kings there the other night. That was pretty cool. And it just, you'd like to see without the camera, you'd like to see, what was going on there. So he'd be a sporting hero. I'm going to go for a rugby guy only because I love his company, and he is the most maligned persona for a long time is Martin Johnson. So Martin looks like he is, what was that Dave Flaherty line about Colin Montgomery, that he looks like a bulldog who's just licked piss off a nettle. Jono always looked sour in a press conference, and he is the least sour man you've ever met, and he is the best of company. He is absolutely stato, but he is every story known to man, so he's pretty cool.
I have to say, with that three, we're going to need quite a big hamper. The boys at Fortnum's are going to have to absolutely double up, I think, on portion control.
We have capacity to eat, and look, if you were going to then decide to do it and do it properly, and you wanted, who do you want to eat beside? I think you'd have to go to another lion and go to Jason Leonard, and he hasn't walked away from a hamper for a long time. So I think there could be a lot of fun in that front row. So you could talk Jason. I would have said for someone who's passed away recently, who I was unbelievable friends with, Eddie Jordan, who was one of the craziest guys of all time, and yet one of the best hosts of all time. So he'd fit in there somewhere, and he wouldn't eat anything at all. So you could bring him and Jason.
That's fine. Even better. And if we were to have one sporting event, it doesn't have to be a picnic location, but anything in the world either you've been to where we could have this picnic, or somewhere you'd love to go that you haven't been, kind of either bucket list been or bucket list would like to, where would it be?
It's funny. I love the occasion of sport. I don't want to go every week. But I love the idea of something spectacular at it. I would say the closest thing to the Lions, it's moving away from it a little. I think partly some of the politics that have happened in golf. I love the Ryder Cup for what it is. I know a good few of the golfers there. I think the idea of, I think it would be really interesting to have that most British of Fortnum and Mason, that idea, having it in Limerick at the Ryder Cup for 2027.
That might be a date. I think we should try and, for those that can make it, I think we should do it. Woody, I've taken up a lot of your time. We've got to get ready for a big Lions game coming up against Argentina. I always love your company, always the best of fun. But also that searing insight that you give around, you always feel like one of the more well-rounded of the rugby players. And as you say, that was because I think you grew up in the amateur time, etc. I've loved having you at my picnic table. Thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure.
Oh, what a joy. Woody, just one of the great characters of rugby. And I think his wisdom and his perception of a lack of hyperbole about the sport he clearly loves is so important. And I just could listen to him all day long. We had to keep it under an hour. Otherwise, Roger would have probably got cross with me. So we don't want that. A massive thanks to Fortnum Mason and to TTB Sport for really be supporting the picnic table that we're putting on, both literally with the food, but also helping the show happen. From the brilliant hampers to massive sporting moments, both companies know how to make experiences feel special. And we're so lucky and grateful to have them with us. See you next time.